Welcome to Buffalo Sports Page. This week in Buffalo Sports, I'm Stu Boyar along with Tony Fiorello and Bud Bailey. Today's show is sponsored by the Paul Wolf Insurance Agency, Logistics Plus of Buffalo, and Dan Chacha Personal Injury Attorneys. Big news this week. Cleveland Browns defensive end Myles Garrett says he wants a trade, and boy, would he look good in a Buffalo Bills uniform. What can Brandon Beane do to make that happen? The big problem might be on the Cleveland side because of the financial issues, but to me, he's a difference maker and perhaps the difference maker for the Bills defense. What do you think?
I think you're right, Stu, in the sense that a nice pass rushing defensive end or defensive lineman is the Bills' biggest need. And we talked about that as a likely spot in the first two or three draft choices that the Bills make for the coming year. And you get a guy who's obviously proven. That's great. And it comes with costs. There's salary cap issues all over the place, and I don't know if that can be worked out, and I don't know if Cleveland's really anxious to do anything. But it's certainly out there, and sometimes teams will say, oh, we can't possibly trade him, and then they wind up doing it because they know the player's not going to be happy, he's not going to report to training camp, and so forth. So it's certainly something to watch.
Make it happen, Brandon Beane. What does he need to do to make it happen on his end?
You got to think Beane would want to move heaven and earth for a guy like that, right? I mean, for a guy who, I mean, has been averaging about 15 sacks a year for his every season. Like Bud said, I mean, obviously, Barry said that, he's probably, not available. That's probably just a negotiating ploy, He'll probably just use that just to try to drive the price up. But you got to think, Beane's got to, take a home run swing there to be able to grab a guy like that. I mean, he's what Buffalo needs, I mean, he's really what they wanted with Vaughn in first, year one, But ever since then, I mean, ever since that injury he hasn't been the same player. So, I mean, he probably would look very good in red, white, and blue.
He just turned 29, and if you can get him, I mean, Beane has a first-round pick in 2 seconds. What do you think we would have to include in a package for Garrett, assuming Cleveland could work it out?
I was just thinking about that. I'm assuming something like a first this year, a second this year, a first next year.
Something along those lines. Well,
you might have to include a player.
Probably.
But the Cleveland probably can't because of the financial considerations.
Right. But, I mean, you got to look at the Khalil Mack trade from the Raiders to the Bears back in 2018. You got to use that as a baseline, at least. You know what I mean? And given the fact that, Garrett's probably a little bit better than what Mack was back then, probably got to up that just a little bit.
Well, Brandon Beane, make it happen. Do whatever you have to do. I can't think of too many players who would look better in a Bills uniform than Myles Garrett.
But if Garrett for some reason doesn't work out, was Max Crosby
I'd take Max Crosby too.
I mean, is he a good, nice consolation prize?
And you know what? If you get Garrett, go ahead and draft another defensive lineman. Really, it's the defense that's been the problem, at least in the bigger games.
Can't have too
many.
What
was that
right?
stat? They gave up an average of 32-plus points. Was that just in the games against Kansas City? Was it all the championship game, the divisional games? I saw it somewhere.
Yeah, it's probably just against Kansas City, but hey, you got to do something there.
It was disturbing.
Yeah.
And had the Bills played better, they'd be playing the Eagles this week. They didn't play well enough. And we have a Super Bowl, the Chiefs and the Eagles.
It's funny, Stu. A lot was made of the fact that the Chiefs didn't score 30 points in their first X games, all regular season plus beginning of the playoffs. And what happens in the AFC Championship game? 32. And they needed every one of them.
Yes, they did. And it was the Bills' defense that allowed those 32 points. So perhaps if they had a Myles Garrett, Mr. Mahomes wouldn't have been able to run around as much or whatever.
It would have been chased a lot more.
Yes, Myles Garrett's a difference maker.
But let's be honest here. I mean, Myles Garrett, he absolutely is a difference maker, and and like I mentioned before, he would look great in a Bills uniform. But if we're being honest here, the Bills they have a lot of needs. You know what I mean?
Sure they do, but a better pass rush makes your secondary better.
Right.
I think I know where you're going.
Yep. And vice versa too. A good secondary can make a good pass rush look good.
I'll take the pass rush every time.
Right.
I just will.
Yep.
I mean, this guy's the closest thing I can think of to Bruce Smith.
Yeah.
And he was obviously a difference maker.
Mario Williams was averaging double-digit sacks a year in Buffalo too. I'm just
Yeah,
saying.
but that team stunk.
They did, yes.
I mean, this is a
At least
really
mediocre.
this is a really, really, really good football team.
Mhm.
They really are. And you want to say they exceeded expectations this year? Great. I don't care. They had a great season, and unfortunately, when it mattered most, they just didn't play well enough.
You mentioned Bruce Smith. Little known fact, who does Myles Garrett work out with in the offseason?
Tell me it's Bruce Smith.
It is Bruce Smith.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Well, Khalil Shakir works out with Eric Moulds.
He does.
So, those former Bills doing a great job still. All right, let's get over to the Super
I
Bowl.
walked on the treadmill this morning.
Fortunately, we're not relying on you to play defensive end.
Not at this age.
Or me, or
Yeah.
Tim,
Yep.
or Tim.
Yep.
So the Chiefs and the Eagles, what do you guys think? I mean, are you going to watch? Are you looking forward to this, or are you just like so disappointed you don't even want to watch?
I'd like to see the numbers on how many people say
Yeah,
they're not going to watch and don't watch.
I'll be watching.
What else is there to do?
Yeah.
Exactly. I'll be watching.
I'm absolutely going to watch. I've had some friends say that they'd rather watch Lord of the Rings, but I'm just like, I'd rather watch the Super Bowl.
Me too.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to this game. I mean, obviously, I'd rather see Buffalo in it, but Kansas City's a dynasty.
Mm-hmm.
The Eagles helped end one previous dynasty when they beat Brady with Nick Foles at quarterback. A journeyman rose up and had the day of his life.
You know how to pick your spots, too.
Yeah, you have to. So what do you guys think? Philly, Kansas City?
I think, and I said this last week, but Philly's got a heck of a team.
Yes, they
and
do.
and what you talk about moments from last week to remember. Washington spent like 18 plays driving the field on the first possession and wound up settling for the field goal, as the cliche goes. And Philly gets the ball after the kickoff, handoff to Barkley, 75 yards later, whatever. He's gone for a score, and all that work that the Commanders put in,
Gotcha.
the Washington football team, is gone.
Yeah.
And that just seemed to set the tone for the whole game. And Barkley, to me, is just a giant X factor in a game like this because nobody has a weapon like him in the entire NFL right now. He's just one of those few guys that's capable of going the distance every play. And that really changes the dynamics. I mean, Cook's had a good year and as run, but he's not Barkley.
Right? Well, no one is. That's a fair point. So the question becomes, is Saquon Barkley, a.k.a. like Michael Jordan? He's going to get his X number of yards, maybe a touchdown or even two. What's the breaking point for Kansas City? If they can keep him to, say, 120, and once he gets over that, the game is over and Philadelphia wins. How and what do they control him? What's the number they need to keep
I
him
would
under?
say no chunk plays, as the saying goes.
Yeah, okay, that's fair.
No big plays, no long touchdown runs. If you keep them to 5-8 yards a pop every so often and occasionally tackle them behind the line of scrimmage if the blocking breaks down, whatever. But you can't afford to have those sorts of big plays happen.
Yeah. Before I get to that, I mean, Bud, you nailed it right on the head. I mean, Washington came out in that NFC Championship game. They set the tone right off the bat. You know what I mean? 18 plays kept them off the field, and then all of a sudden, Barkley first play just hits 60 yards for a touchdown. It's watching Barkley run against other NFL teams is almost like watching a high school team. You know what I mean? Watching a good high school team against one that's not very good. But you mentioned the fact that it's obviously priority number one for Steve Spagnuolo to be able to stop him. It's almost kind of like watching or kind of reminds me of the matchup between the Rams and Patriots in 2001. The number one thing for Belichick in that game was trying to stop Marshall Faulk, right? That's who Barkley reminds me of. He's Marshall Faulk 2.0. And when you put him behind that offensive line in Philadelphia, I mean, it's you talk about the best offensive lines in the NFL. You put Buffalo up there, you put Detroit up there. Philadelphia is right up there with them, if not better. I mean, it's
City?
I mean, you move Joe Tooney to the left tackle. There's a hole there at left guard, and for some reason teams haven't been exploiting that as much. But anyway,
thought I'd throw that in.
It's crazy. I mean, Jason Kelsey, he retires after last year. You think they drop off a little bit, Not at all. They just move Cam Jurgens from right guard to center. You take a reclamation project like Mekhi Becton, former Jet first-round pick, left tackle. They move him to right guard. They haven't missed a beat. And it's you got to think Spags, he's going to probably try and load up the box, at least put 8 guys down there, but then try and stop him. Yeah, he'll get his chunk plays, but it's hard to do that all the time when you have weapons on the outside like the Eagles do with, A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith and Goddard and Jalen Hurts throwing the ball. And I don't envy Spags this week at all. I don't think anybody should.
So,
And I will add that I'm not saying Hurts is a great quarterback right now, but he's good enough. He's very good enough so that if you worry too much about Barkley, he can make you pay for it.
Yes.
And that's
no doubt.
and I'm assuming he's going to be healthy. You never know on these things because it's that time of year where there's all secrets and how well he's doing. But if he has he's certainly capable of having a big game.
Yeah.
All right, we'll make our picks on the game in the final segment, but for now we're going to take a quick break, and we'll be back with more on Buffalo Sports Page.
Need an electrician? Empire Electric is your residential wiring specialist. New builds, service upgrades, lighting, generators, you name it, Empire does it with hundreds of 5-star reviews that speak for themselves. Call Empire Electric today for your free estimate.
Education has power. Binghamton University students discover it, apply it, unleash it. Unleash your education today.
Welcome back to Buffalo Sports Page. I'm Stu Boyar along with Bud Bailey and Tony Fiorello. Today's show is sponsored by the Paul Wolf Insurance Agency, Logistics Plus of Buffalo, and Dan Chacha Personal Injury Attorneys. I know it's hard to believe, but the Buffalo Sabres have won 4 straight games, first time since January of 2023. You're laughing, but that's actually good news.
It is good news, but I'm just saying it's crazy that it took them this long to do it. When every team in the league has had one since then.
As we used to say in the newspaper business, put that on A1.
Yes.
Well, they have problems bigger than a 4-game winning streak. Sunday afternoon, we all saw Tage Thompson take a wicked hit to the head, and the Sabres stood around and did nothing. And that got them a lot of scorn from around the National Hockey League and the media, and it was not a good look. Team last place with nothing to really gain or lose because it doesn't look like they're making the playoffs. It'd take a miracle to do that, but yet they failed to protect their teammates. How is that possible?
I thought I had heard something after the game about Jason Zucker saying that nobody wanted to take a run at him because they didn't want to ruin their chance at having a power play and winning.
No,
I don't know about that.
He did say something because I heard it.
Yeah, I thought I heard something
trying
about
to
that
win
effect.
the game, and which was surprising because I really like Zucker. He's been one of their better players, maybe even their best player. Well, not their best, but he's been very good. And he did say something to that effect. We're trying to win the game.
Yeah. But it's at the same time, it's just like...
They're kind of unwritten rules in hockey, aren't there?
Yeah.
And this could go on for 3 hours. I'm not a big fan of frontier justice in hockey and other sports. Right. And in this case, okay, you go over to the player who made the hit, and if you want to shove him around and say this will not stand, I mean, is punching him in the face going to make that much of a difference?
Yes. Drop the gloves. Go get him. Really. Go get him. Throw him to the ice. This is hockey, baby. I know you don't like fighting, Bud, and I'm sure there were, back in the day, guys would have jumped over the bench. And look what if you want to compare it to the Chris Drury hit, who did Lindy send out for the next shift? That didn't happen Sunday. Mm-hmm. So was it disappointing? Yeah, your best player is down on the ice, taken out by a real cheap shot. Even the NHL officials got that one right, a game misconduct and a match penalty, and yet the Sabres' response was nil.
I'll say this. I mean, fighting doesn't win hockey games in the NHL. I mean, this obviously isn't the Broad Street Bullies.
No, that era's
That era's been long gone. But I'll say this about fighting. There is a time and a place for it, and I think at that point there was probably the time and place to do it. And they just, for whatever reason, just backed off. And I mean, it sounded like Lindy was livid after the game, but they just didn't do anything about it until Columbus. So, at least, I mean,
that's not doing anything.
I know it's not doing anything about it, but I mean,
there's your best player laid out.
Yeah,
And you did nothing.
I found it interesting last night that for whatever reason, different team comes in and there's a fight from the opening faceoff. Okay, they exchange a few punches. I'm not sure what the point of it was. I don't know, but it happens, and the game went on from there. And I turn on the late news, and the lead to the Sabres story is there was a fight in the first second. And it was kind of like, really? That had nothing to do with the game. I know there were circumstances leading up to it, but does that prove anything that you went and tried to hit a big guy from Columbus? It just seemed very odd to me.
I will grant you that. Although I think that Sabres could use a few more guys with the grit of, say, a Dennis Gilbert. I think that's one of the things that's been largely missing. Now, remember, Friday they put Rob Ray into the Hall of Fame. It's well-deserved, and he was one of those team-first guys who took and threw a lot of punches standing up for his teammates, who I think his role allowed them to get more time and space to operate. And if he had ever seen one of his teammates laid out like that, he would have done something about it. So now they couldn't get the guy because they threw him out of the game. So I got to point that out.
yeah.
too.
This whole situation reminds me of remember when Miller got whacked around
By
Right.
Lucic.
by Lucic? Yep, and I think it might have been the same year where Jordan Tutu took a run at him too. It was a couple weeks later against Nashville. But anyway, they basically.
The Sabres could have done that too, run their goaltender.
Yeah,
That
but
doesn't happen much
right,
anymore.
but
Once Barnaby left. And Barnaby would run his own goaltender just as likely as anything.
yeah, we all know he wanted to run Dom, but anyway, they basically took that to heart and went after guys like Steve Ott and John Scott in the offseason. I don't know if this is necessarily is it the same situation as that? That's what I'm just trying to think about.
No, there's similarities.
Yeah, but
again, it's a different era. To one of Bud's points, I just find it disturbing. It just bothers me. Why didn't anybody do anything? Do something.
right.
You're just standing around waiting for the officials to make the call. I hate that.
Yeah.
Do
It's
something.
Now,
I'll drive
for-
somebody through the boards.
for the Bandits, a guy got cheap shotted. One of the Bandits players went over to help him a few weeks ago and wound up.
Help him. Do you mean got in a
Right,
fight?
got into a fight, and he was taking off like his elbow pad or something, and the other guy threw a punch that knocked him into next week.
Which other? Hold on. The Bandits
The,
guy got
the
hit.
Toronto guy, the Bandits guy got hit. His teammate came to help him. The Toronto guy knocked him into next week, and it was, a one-punch KO as these things go. Suddenly, it's all over the media and being mentioned on the Pat McAfee show, this great knockout that came in a lacrosse game. What a great sport. And it's the whole issue came up in a different sense in that way because it's like, was that worth it? He wound up missing a game just to get his head back together again, the Bandit. But it was another very odd situation that happens sometimes in contact sports.
Okay, I'll give you that one. Unfortunately, the Toronto guy sounds like it was a sucker punch.
It was on the border, I think.
Okay, and the Bandits did anything about that afterward? Or was
Well,
that the end
I
of
mean,
it?
he had gone in and
but that was the end of it.
That was the response, and then the referees, cleared the room.
I guess the only difference is the Bandits are a perennial powerhouse and the Sabres are not. And when you're not a powerhouse, things look a little worse. Maybe. I really don't know. It's a tough situation.
Yeah.
And Lindy Ruff was very upset after the game Sunday. You could see that in his answers. He was not a happy camper.
Yeah.
And he cancels practice Monday, and they supposedly had some difficult conversations, and that might have been the springboard for the Gilbert fight.
I think there's more pro-fighting people in the media than in the general, on a percentage basis, than the general population.
I don't know. The only thing
I get that sense.
Well, you could be right. The only thing I'll tell you is if you go to a hockey game, what happens when players drop the gloves? The entire crowd
There's a
stands
roar.
up.
Yeah. I will say this though, it's interesting with the whole Dennis Gilbert fight from yesterday. You guys know who Mark Lazarus is? Sports writer out of Chicago.
Yeah, I do know that name for some. Why I know that name, I have no idea.
He
rose from the dead recently.
he rose from the dead.
Very good. Very good.
Good call,
Can't
Bud.
Can't get anything past Bud.
Anyway, he absolutely can't. But he kind of mentioned something about that fight yesterday and said something along the lines of like, I'm not sure if that really had much of a place. I'm not really sure how much of a difference that made, with the Dennis Gilbert fight. And then a guy who responded to him was on Twitter/X was Brent Sopel, former Chicago Blackhawks defenseman, who responded to him basically saying something along the lines of saying like if to somebody who never played in the NHL, this doesn't mean anything, but if you played hockey, you would understand. But it just sounds like
Did you hear Alex talk after the game?
Yeah.
How much credit he gave Dennis Gilbert?
Mm-hmm.
I rest my case. It had an impact.
Well, the teammates always appreciate if someone else gets punched in the face
Right.
for their quote unquote cause. That's a given.
Right.
Okay, it is
But-
a given, but it happened and he did
Yeah,
it.
but-
He's willing to do it,
Yep. And
and obviously it mattered. It mattered
Yeah.
to some degree
Yeah.
to somebody, someplace. And
did it affect the game? I don't know.
maybe it gave the Sabres a little shot of confidence, or maybe it told them they're tired of being pushed around and they're not going to be pushed around.
If they're not tired of being pushed around in all sorts of ways by now,
Well,
X years into the drought,
all right,
something's wrong.
Well, as we head toward March, we're coming up on the trade deadline. Is there an untouchable on that roster?
Oof.
Darlene certainly.
I would say Darlene would probably.
I would say
I would
probably
not
just
trade Thompson.
it's probably just those two. You got to think, right? I mean,
UPL, I'm not sure you'd get anybody who's an improvement.
Levi, I can't see them wanting to trade him part with so quickly
Well,
either.
Levi still has to prove himself at
Yeah,
the NHL.
right.
Yes.
He's been very good in the AHL, but he struggled when he's come up here, if you were to ask me. Of course, he's been put in some situations. I can't stand the fact that they've recalled him twice, played him twice.
Yeah, that whole
Just
game.
leave him in Rochester.
Yeah.
But so you would say Thompson and Darlene would be
Power and Cousins have such big contracts that's going to be a tough lift to even think about moving them in some
Cousins
sort of
seems
thing.
to be the name that's out there more than anyone.
Yep. I mean, Pierre LeBrun from TSN basically said that there's like 2/3 of the league is interested in Cousins. One team that he mentioned in particular about Cousins was Calgary. I'm not sure if you're looking to move any of those guys, it's got to. If you're Kevin Adams, you'd basically want a hockey trade, right? I'm sure that they're at the point right now where they don't want to bring in prospects and draft picks
hope not.
anymore.
No.
Yeah.
I hope
At
you need
this
players.
point right now, you need an infusion of talent and a little bit more of a veteran voice, in that locker room. But I mean, is Calgary really the right kind of match for a guy like Cousins? I'm not sure.
Yeah, but if you're trading him, you're not necessarily concerned about that. You're
Right.
concerned about what's coming back.
That's what I meant to
Well,
say.
Nazem Kadri, a guy with some grit, might be a little bit
Yeah,
older.
Okay.
He's older,
But
I'm
is-
not saying trade him even up. I'm just
Right.
throwing that out there.
Right. I mean, but my thing is with Calgary, with that contract they gave Kadri a few years ago, they basically paid him for the kind of production he was putting up in Colorado. He was and he had to play with more elite talent there. Is he putting up those same kind of numbers with Calgary? Not really.
a little bit older. And,
Yeah.
well, don't forget the salary cap is going up, and also don't forget, didn't Colorado just trade a guy named Mikko Rantanen?
Yes.
Would they have traded them if they had known the salary cap was going up? Break up that pair of McKinnon and Rantanen?
Yeah.
Salary cap always goes up.
Well,
That's right. I've never heard one just like
No,
tax.
well,
they never go
Well,
down.
in the NHL, it stayed stagnant for about
Except for the
5 years,
pandemic
but-
year.
Yeah. Stayed stagnant for about 5 years, but whatever.
All right. Well, we've solved nothing. Outlook for the rest of the season quickly bleak, but I'm always an optimist.
What are they? 1% chance by the analytics guys of making the playoffs?
Hey,
Yeah.
maybe it goes up to a whopping 1.5%.
Just win the fifth straight, take a break, and they're winnable games afterward. But everybody says that it's playing the Sabres.
And get ready for the Four Nations tournament, whatever that is.
Yeah, shut down your league for 2 weeks. I never quite understood that strategy. All right, we're going to take another break, and we'll be back with More after this on Buffalo Sports Page.
Just results.
Your life can change in an instant after an injury. You need a trusted partner at your side. Hi, I'm Dan Chacha. At Dan Chacha Injury Attorneys, we're here to help you navigate the challenges you'll face. Our dedicated team fights tirelessly for your rights, ensuring you get the compensation you deserve. Don't worry, Chacha's got you. Call Dan Chacha Injury Attorneys today for a free consultation. Your injury is our priority.
Call 648-3030. Just results.
Explore your next idea. Blaze new trails. Imagine new ways to do things. What will you do next?
Welcome back to Buffalo Sports Page, NFL Hall of Fame. I guess we find out who's going to be the 5 finalists or the 5 who are going in this weekend. I don't see Steve Tasker on this list. In my opinion, he's a Hall of Famer, and I just thought I'd throw
He would be a senior contributor, by the way.
Well, I think he belongs in. He
Yeah.
changed the way people look at the game.
Yep.
But anyway, some of these names on here. How is Antonio Gates not in the Hall of Fame already?
I would have thought he was the first ballot guy.
How about Torrey Holt? Did I see him on here? No.
Yep. Torrey Holt's
there
on
he
there.
is. I mean, he was part of the greatest show on turf. So
I say this about Torrey Holt. I mean, you look at the greatest show on turf. You already have Kurt Warner, Marshall Faulk, Orlando Pace, and Isaac Bruce in the Hall of Fame, right? Torrey Holt, in my opinion, is basically the exact same wide receiver as Isaac Bruce. You got to have both of them in my opinion.
that's fair. How about I just read and we'll just nod our heads? Eric Allen, yes or no? Cornerback.
You know, there aren't any bums on this list.
No.
I know.
That's the problem.
I know. Well, I'll just read the whole list. And
Yeah.
Eric Allen, cornerback. Jared Allen, defensive end. Willie Anderson, tackle. Jari Evans, guard. Antonio Gates, Torrey Holt. Luke Kuechly, linebacker. How's he not in there?
Yeah.
Great player. Eli Manning, quarterback. Now, there's a really great debatable one, I think.
Won 2 Super Bowls.
Yeah, but
That's what the argument is. Basically.
right, and that's really not a good argument. And Dan Marino won none. Who would you rather have?
I mean,
I mean, Kurt Warner got in.
But
Would you rather have Warner or Manning?
Marino.
Warner.
I would.
The choice.
No, I would probably take Warner.
I'll say this about Eli. I mean, at any point in his career, was he considered a top 10 quarterback in the NFL?
Eli?
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah.
I mean, he had some
Top
really
10.
good years.
Yeah.
I mean,
He also- I
you
think
don't
he
win
also
all
led
those
the inter-
games unless you're not really good.
Yeah, but I mean, and I get the fact that he was also on a 500 team for most of his career, but that's not really his fault.
No, it's not Josh Allen's fault that the Buffalo
No.
Bills can't get over the hump.
Yeah.
I mean, everybody shares the blame. I had to get that in.
Yeah.
All right, after Eli, Steve Smith, wide receiver, Terrell Suggs, outside linebacker, Fred Taylor, running back, Adam Vinatieri, kicker, Reggie Wayne, wide receiver, Darren Woodson, safety. How's he not in there? And Marshall Yanda, guard tackle. Well, sounds like they're all deserving.
Well,
I
that's
mean,
the
it's a
problem.
Great list.
The problem with the NFL is you've got 22 positions, and let's say you have one guy who's clearly the best player at that position. Okay, so that's 22 guys in a given year. They pile up for years, and then you have to get down to picking 5 of those guys.
Yep.
So it's very difficult.
Plus, they also have to throw in whatever contributor wants to go in, and plus the senior candidates and whatnot. So
Just don't count on the 5.
right.
Right.
Because there's 2 spots for other guys.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Vinatieri is a great kicker and will go in
Eventually,
sometime.
At some point, yes.
Is it? And I think it's just a matter of what year it is. And a lot of the guys. I mean, Steve Smith, who he has got incredible numbers, played forever. I mean, he'll be in. It's just a matter of clogging it through. Baseball is a little different because you're voting for guys, and you have years where 4 worthy candidates go in together, and suddenly it's all cleaned out.
Right.
So the next year, there are guys who you have to consider who might not be with those guys who went in the previous year, but they're still worthy candidates, and you say, all right, is it their turn?
Yep.
All right. Go ahead. One last point, and then we got
Little question I'll ask you guys, because we know Vinatieri will eventually get in. Guy had ice water running through his veins for years. Can you name the other 2 full-time kickers who are in the Hall of Fame?
Jan Stenerud wasn't he?
Jan Stenerud is one of them.
Ray Guy count?
Ray Guy, but he was a punter. Not
Right.
Right.
Lou Groza.
Lou Groza was a part-time kicker along with George Blanda.
Oh, but he's not in the. Who's the other kicker?
They're in the
Hold
Hall
on.
of Fame.
Let's see if you guys can.
Hold on. I know Stenerud's one of them. And
Stenerud is one of them.
I should know this. us. I have to think about that. It may come. Go ahead, tell us.
Morton Anderson,
Okay. Well, that makes
Good.
sense.
Yeah.
he was great.
Kick forever.
Okay. So,
NFL's all-time leading scorer.
the one team in Buffalo that wins even more than the Bills is the Bandits, and I guess they won again last week, didn't they? Or the
They
week
did
before.
6-0. They won a game by 6 goals, and their average margin of victory dropped a little.
You're kidding.
No, they were averaging 15 goals a game and under 9 allowed, and they won this one 16-10, and so the average went down.
Wow.
But when they're playing, they have stretches where they're playing as well as any lacrosse team I've ever seen. And I've been covering these guys since 2009. The key is they've got Dane Smith and Josh Byrne at the top of the offense, and they make everyone else better. And the other guys feed off of that. You have to be so worried about those two guys. At one point Saturday, Josh Byrne called Dane Smith the greatest passer on the planet. And
That's high praise.
And I said, what determines that? A rare good question by me. And he went on for a minute, and the answer is part of the story on the Buffalo Sports Page website. But he basically said it's like having a great quarterback who throws the ball around to the right place all the time, gets it in a position on the stick where once the guy catches it, he can do something with it. But he sees the field so well that he knows what he wants to do with it and makes the play to accentuate that, which was really, you don't get that sort of insight in those post-game scrums very often, but that was really good to hear that. All news to me.
That's a rare gift.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
How many people have that gift? That is rare.
Yeah.
Well, time to make our Super Bowl picks. So what do we got here, fellas? Go ahead, Bud. We'll let you kick it off.
I think the Eagles win and Kelsey still retires after the game.
Does he marry
And-
Taylor
and-
Swift?
and-
That's the big question.
Well, he'll have time for whatever he wants now.
I'm just kidding.
Count their money.
I don't know if they can count that high. So you're going
Yeah.
with the Eagles.
I think the Eagles are going to win a close one. I think three-peats are tough, and it's never been done before, and that's a pretty big hurdle. I admire them for what they've done to get there, because it's not easy. But this may be if this might be the last stand. It's hard to keep a team like that together beyond this little window completely. They're always going to be good with Mahomes, but I think this is a good spot for the Eagles to grab it.
Pick a score,
27-21.
Tony.
Do you guys remember what Pat Summerall's line was after the Giants upset the 49ers in the 90 NFC Championship game? There will be no...
Is that the one that Montana got knocked out in?
Yep. Roger Craig fumbled late.
I don't remember.
Pat Summerall's line right when Matt Barr hit the field goal at the end of the game was...
Is there a fake?
There
ball
will-
that game?
Yes, there was.
Okay, sorry. Go ahead.
There will be no three-peat.
Okay.
And I think I think Kevin Burkhardt might be saying that at the end of the game for Fox. I mean, full credit to Kansas City for being able to get to this point. I mean, it's like you mentioned, it's so hard to be able to get there and try to, be able to win 3 in a row because it's never been done. But, you look at Philadelphia, they're just we talked about their offense already. Their defense is better than it was 2 years ago. And their defense 2 years ago was pretty darn good, I mean, what are they? I think they were like number 1 in total yards, number 1 against the
They were
pass.
Number 1 in a lot of categories.
Top 10, I think, in points allowed and against the run, something like that, and in takeaways, I think too. I mean, it's. I think this Eagles team is better than they were 2 years ago, and I think the Chiefs are obviously the Chiefs. We all know how good they are, but I think it's going to be tough for them to be able to get that third ring.
Okay.
I think I'm going to pick Philadelphia in this one, something along the lines of, let's say 31-28.
Okay.
I will say, remember, the Bills 4 Super Bowls in a row. Kansas City will be going to match that next time.
Yes.
We all said it'll never be duplicated.
Yes.
And suddenly, that's in the conversation next year.
I would rather see Kansas City win this year and not have to deal with them next year because the Bills knock them out. I mean, that would be much better. I was wrong about the Commanders and the Eagles. I finally learned years ago to never pick against the Patriots dynasty, and I'm doing the same thing. I'm not picking against the Chiefs. They will find a way. I don't know how. I just think they will find a way to win this game. Andy Reid comes up with, I mean, the subplot of Andy Reid in Philadelphia again is just fascinating. They beat them before because, if I remember correctly, Jalen Hurts put the ball on the ground. That was a Kansas City touchdown, and that was the difference in the game. So I'm going to go now. Is it going to? Who knows how it's going to play out? I just think Kansas City, which won all those one-score games, finds a way to win another one, and we'll call it. I don't know if they can score 30 on the Eagles, but can the Eagles put up 30 on the Chiefs? We'll see. We'll call it 31-30 Kansas City in literally a one-score game. Should be a great game. I'm looking forward.
And you'll be watching.
Of course, yes, as will both of you. All right, quick final thought. We made our picks. One final thought about anything in particular, and then we'll wrap it up. Pick a topic.
I'm good.
You're good? You're good, too? You always got plenty of thoughts. Most of them we don't get, but no.
Come on, Stu.
I'm just kidding.
NBA trade deadline
That was a
comes
big
up
trade.
tomorrow,
Yeah.
and a heck of a trade with the Lakers and Mavericks,
was-
unprecedented.
Luka
That was
Doncic,
two,
yeah.
two first-team All-NBA players for each other.
That was
Out of left field.
Stunning.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Stunning. Okay, well, it proves the point. Wayne Gretzky was traded. Those two NBA guys were traded. Myles Garrett can be traded and hopefully will be traded to the Buffalo Bills.
Way to bring it back to the start, Stu.
Yes, thank you. And that's going to do it for our show today. I want to thank our producer, Tim Gardner, Tony Fiorello, Bud Bailey, Stu Boyar, and thanks most of all to you for watching. We'll see you next week.